Thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Ben Stapleton. I'm the Executive Director here at the U.S. Green Building Council, California. We're just going to cover a little bit of welcome and intro, and then we'll try to dive in to the meat of our topic today. Just to start,
you first came here.
Really want to share our vision for the future. We are an independent nonprofit here at USGBC California. Our mission is really to transform California into a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable place for all. We do that through buildings and through improving buildings and the built environment. Our belief is really the built environment touches everything, infrastructure, site, you name it, and everything comes home in a building somewhere. Including ourselves, as we'll talk about today. And our mission really involves four simple things: leading, educating, connecting, and advocating. You will notice those are all action words because we really believe that our work should be driven by action, informed action, but action nonetheless. And it's important to keep moving forward. To start today, really just wanted to take a moment of silence. Want to lead into that awkwardness for a second. For all those who've been impacted by the fires, this has touched so many of us in so many ways. And so I would just like to take a moment here of silence. Thank you. Just want to share this picture here on the left is a picture that I took up near Inspiration Point, just above Altadena, just a couple of days before the fires. I typically will do an annual sort of New Year's hike to center myself and reflect on all the things I probably should do better in the year ahead. And I want to show this image for me because I feel like right now we're really kind of overwhelmed by images of destruction and of negativity. But it's important to remember that how beautiful the city is and that we can be a guiding light and that there is a vision for the future when we can be in touch and in harmony with nature. This area where I took this picture from is now burned, and my fingers are crossed that some of these trees still exist. But we need to be focused on some of that vision for the future and something that's positive and hopeful. I feel like that's helpful right now. Another thing that I think has really hit me in the last few weeks, a number of our team members were impacted by the fire, lost their homes, and I live here in Pasadena. Fire stopped probably about a half mile from me, and I know many of you today have been impacted in ways far greater than that. That this is a marathon, it's not a race. This is a journey. I came across this graphic, which really stuck with me a little bit because I feel like right now we're still very early in that process. We're still in a bit of this community cohesion. I don't want to call it a honeymoon phase because it doesn't feel like that to me, but we're in this cohesion phase of coming together. And the coming months will likely continue to be challenging, right? And the media will move on, and it's important that we'll be here for each other to continue to lift each other up during this time. So I just wanted to really share the message with everyone that it's important that we continue to support each other during this process, which will be a long one, and to acknowledge that up front. For us, some of our wildfire defense work began after the Thomas and Woolsey fires back in 2018. We launched a green building initiative at that time, rebuilding initiative to really help folks whose homes had been touched by the fire. That led to us continuing to find that there was a space to make an impact and a positive impact in this particular area. We launched a wildfire defense education and tours program in 2020. That led to us forming an advisory group and developing a wildfire defense toolkit and guide for homeowners. And then after years of applying for funding, we were finally awarded some funding back in 2022 to develop a wildfire defense certification program for contractors and landscapers. We've had over 1,300 folks go through that program at this point. We've certified a number of folks. We actually offer those classes now in English and Spanish, and have integrated those into our learning management system, which we'll talk a little bit more here in a moment. We're also big believers in there's no substitute for getting out there and kicking the bricks, as we like to say, and big believers in tours and people being able to get out there and actually see with their own eyes ways that homes have been hardened and landscapes been hardened. And so that's something as we go into 2025, we'll continue to offer these classes and likely ramp that up, update this training content, launch a rebuilding guide, and continue to have these in-person home tours so that folks can really learn how to improve where they are themselves. We'll also be doing community workshops and expanding a lot of this programming here across the state. So to dive a little bit deeper, and I won't take too much time at the beginning of this call, one of the things that I really want to stress for everyone is the importance of personal connections. As folks are looking for help in figuring out where to go next, what to do next, we have found that having these hosted in-person community workshops, having tables staffed by experts like some of whom you'll hear from today around energy efficiency, landscape, fire resilient materials, being able to create those connections is really important. But we also learned through that process back in 2018 and 2019 that really meeting people where they're at on the human side, dealing with loss, being there for the long term. People are going to leave those workshops and they're going to have questions that come up 3 months later, 6 months later, 18 months later. That's incredibly important. So we just want to stress that again, that this is just the beginning of this support and that we expect this will take years to really see a lot of this through. And we want to continue to make those connections for folks. One of the things that we've done is we do have a website that we've stood up now, as have many, in support of the fires. A couple things I want to point out is that we do have forums on that site. So if you have resources you may be able to provide, that could be your expertise, that could be materials. We've already received donations. Please go to that link there, and I'll ask someone on my team to drop that link in the chat, please, to the site. Would ask you to fill out that form and submit. We will be matchmaking those resources with people in need. And for us, it's really important to mobilize our green building community across California to help support these efforts. And you are a lot of that value. If you bring expertise to the table, experience, if you have time, all that is valuable, and people will need help with a lot of these different pieces of the process. And again, we have opportunities there to fill it out if you have needs, if you're a homeowner or a contractor who just needs help. By expertise, if you have that, or if you have resources to share. We will be offering in-person community workshops in the months to come, as well as updating our wildfire defense toolkit to create a green rebuilding toolkit, and also reframing our wildfire defense certification around rebuilding for contractors and landscapers. We also have a trailer that we bring often to community events called our Build Smart trailer. We're going to be looking to update that with fire resilient materials. It already has, I think, over 100 different green building materials in there now. We're going to update that to make sure, again, people can touch and feel and really learn about ways to improve the environments that they're in, to improve their health and their resilience. So again, just one last ask here for you. If you do have some of that expertise that you can share, or those resources, or if you are looking for help, please feel free to scan this QR code, drop a link in the chat, and we'll reach out to you. But we wanted to really try to move those matchmaking resources forward. I also mentioned our training earlier. So we have training scheduled for 2 dates in February and a date in March. So you can see here our Wildfire Defense Certificate training for construction professionals will take place on February 12th. Our similar class, but for landscape professionals, will take place on February 25th. And then we offer that class also in Spanish for construction professionals and landscapers, but the construction version will happen in March. So please spread the word on these classes. We've always found it's very difficult to reach all the contractors, all the landscapers. That's a pretty fragmented base, and we really want to make sure we're trying to get this information out to folks before they start to work on jobs in the months and years to come. I'll also mention that we do offer, for anyone who does get certified through our program, to be listed in our professionals directory. We have a number of folks who've gone through this program and been certified listed in the directory now. So if you are looking for help and learning how to rebuild in a more fire resilient manner, again, we have construction professionals, contractors, landscapers that are in this directory who have been certified through our program, and we'll look to continue to build that out, improve that directory, and add more contacts in the months to come. A lot of this content is available through our Learning Center. I won't talk about that too much right now, but we will be adding some of this content on demand in the months to come as well. And I do believe, and my team will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe actually we have recordings now of our wildfire defense training in this Learning Center and accessible so that you can watch it on demand and get your certification as needed. One thing that I wanted to mention that's come up, we've gotten a lot of questions in the past few weeks around healthier space. Everyone's worried about their indoor air quality. People are worried obviously about toxic ash and other things. We do have a occupant health toolkit that we've released and updated over the last few years that does have 5 healthy building principles you can have. So indoor air quality, water quality, green cleaning, access to green space, physical activity. Encourage you to really check this out. We do cover a lot of issues around indoor air quality in this toolkit, and it can be a great resource if you just have healthier space where you live or work. So please check that out. There's a QR code there. And again, I'll ask one of my team members to please put a link in the chat so folks can access that. The last resource I'll sort of mention before we dive into our panel is we have a community hub that we launched last year that's for our member base primarily. This is sort of like what I like to call kind of LinkedIn meets Facebook, meets something better, hopefully, than the two of those, as well as our green building community. But we have different committees in this group, different topic threads. We have launched a wildfire recovery and rebuilding community on our platform. We're going to share, I think it might be on the next screen. I think we have a code to share with you to access the platform for free. So we're providing a free year of membership and access to this platform. But we really encourage people to get on there, ask questions, share with each other. Our green building community has access to that as well, and just create this space where you can really connect and get those questions answered right away. And so you can see here that the tool itself is kind of living, and again includes great links. So there's a code there you can scan to get access for a full year of membership and access to that community hub. That's Recovery 2025. And we hope you get engaged there, and again share resources there. Everything we get today, we will post into that community hub as well. All right, so with that, I think, did we skip? What happened to our agenda? Maybe we covered it at the beginning. My apologies. You're probably sick of hearing from me already. And so I'm going to start our panel here in just a moment. I want to say thank you to the speakers we have here today. And also just note that this is a long process. There's experts probably at every step of the way to tackle different challenges. We don't think this will be the last moment we gather to talk about this issue, but we wanted to assemble what we thought was a diverse group to talk about some of the issues right now, as we've had questions really flooding in from folks around how to go about recovery and rebuilding in a more sustainable, more resilient manner. And before I ask the panelists to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about the role they play around these topics, I just want to note something that Ann said, Ann E., who will introduce herself in a moment ago, that this isn't an opportunity. We shouldn't look at it like this. This is a tragedy, and we need to make sure we acknowledge that for people who have been impacted. And just make sure we're moving from that space as we look forward, because it's important to honor the humanity of what we've all experienced. So with that, I'm going to go to our speakers to introduce themselves and ask themselves to take themselves, put themselves back on camera and take themselves off mute. And Ann Edminster, I'll ask you to introduce yourself first.
All right. Thanks, Ben. Great introduction. I'm a green building consultant. I'm based in the North Bay and moved here actually after the major fires here starting in 2017, but was very involved in planning a Rebuild Green Expo that we held in both early 2018 and early 2019. We had between 2,000 and 3,000 attendees at each event. And this was a largely volunteer effort that came spontaneously out of the North Bay area green building community in the sense of what can we do to help? And so learned a lot through that process, and particularly about the resources that are available and some of the issues that arise. So I'll be happy to share some of those insights as we proceed.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you for making the time with us. And this is one of the things that I found so powerful about bringing our communities together across California last year, is we can tap into expertise like Ann's and the other Ann that you're gonna hear from in a moment across the state, because we're not the only place in the state that's experienced this. This has touched so many parts of our state over the past few years and before that. So Ann Baker, if you could introduce yourself really quickly, the other Ann.
Yeah, great. Thank you. My name's Ann Baker. I'm with Land Culture LLP. We recently changed our business name. And I'm a landscape architect also in Petaluma. I'm a North Bay area native. Seen a lot of wildfires, worked quite a bit after the Tubbs fire in the rebuild, and have rebuilt kind of also in the WUI areas, and working on wildfire risk reduction planning and forest stewardship. and Firewise demonstration gardens. So I have a lot of experience in this space, and look forward to talking with everyone today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you for being here. John Dunley, if you could introduce yourself. John, you may be on mute. You may have to go off mute. Wouldn't be a good call unless someone was on mute. John, we'll come back to you
There
here in
we
just.
are.
Oh, there you are. There you are. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's okay if you just introduce yourself.
I'm a general contractor. I work mostly in solving problems. I've worked in dispute resolution for 30 years and also large commercial construction. And residential construction, I did a number of fire reconstructions, and I worked for 6 different municipalities in Marin County mainly that regarding getting permits and inspecting construction. So my experience is entirely within the construction industry. And I have some familiarity with insurance in that I worked for insurance companies doing inspections for 6 different insurance companies and providing reports of fire damage, mostly from the Oakland fire.
Thank you, John. And John was really helpful for us with a lot of our workshops after the Thomas and Woolsey fire, and is a bit of a code expert. So he's underselling himself a little bit. That's part of why we have him here today to help join us talk a little bit about code. Let's see, Greg, could you introduce yourself next? Greg, you're on mute, just so you know. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I'm Greg McHugh. I'm with the Bill Canyon Fire Safety Council. Just here to learn. Thank you.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now, Greg. Yeah.
Like you, Ben, I spent Inspiration Point. I spent New Year's Day at Inspiration Point in the Palisades that also got burned. And
Oh, wow. Look at
really
that.
grew up in the Palisades community. I'm an architect. Began my career in Malibu after the 1993 Old Topanga fire. So it's been a bit of a road here. The house we recently completed on Iliff Street in the Palisades went viral because of a picture I took and posted the next day. And so 120 houses further up the street did not survive, and this one did. So we're picking apart the pieces and reminding ourselves what works and what didn't.
Thank you for joining us, Greg. Laura, can you introduce yourself next?
Hi, thank you so much, Ben, for inviting me to join you on this team. My name is Laura K. Dunbar, and I'm an architect and a general contractor out here in Ventura. I was heavily involved with the Thomas Fire rebuild, and that occurred in December 2017. There was a real proactive group of professionals both in the design and the construction field that came together and worked with the city pretty intimately and the community pretty intimately to see how we could, address our rebuilding, especially since it happened in the hillside and there were lots of intricacies that needed to be addressed. And so with that experience, there's an enormous amount of empathy that I continually feel and kind of understanding what people are going through. And I just appreciate being here and being able to be involved in this next process. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And then I'm gonna call him the infamous Steve Glenn. I do feel like Steve's a bit infamous in our green building world. So I'm gonna go to you next, Steve, to introduce yourself.
I'm dyslexic. I've never understood whether that's good or bad. First of all, I just want to acknowledge anyone who lost homes. Just very, very sorry about that. Many of my friends did. I'm the founder and CEO of Plant Prefab. We built many homes for people who were victims of the Tubbs fire and Woolsey. So we understand the stress and the challenges. We focus on single and multifamily housing. We work with any architect. We are a certified B Corp. We're actually a benefit corp. Our sustainability is very core to how we build and frankly, how we operate. So we know how to build in a very fire resilient and sustainable way. We opened about a year ago a 270,000 square foot, $40 million facility south of Bakersfield. We can do about 1,000 to 2,000 homes a year. So we hope and expect to be contribute to rebuilding effort.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us, Steve. So to start, as I said to begin this, we've been through this before. This is a marathon, not a race. How to prepare ourselves now for what comes next, I think is a really important question that we really need to be talking about. And I'm going to maybe go to Ann E to start this part of the conversation, just to share some of your experience, after the Tubbs fire and others. How should we be preparing ourselves right now for what goes next? How do we start to lay the foundation to go about this in a more resilient and sustainable manner?
That's kind of a layered question. I think that there's kind of two aspects to that. One is developing some filters as to kind of appropriate and inappropriate responses. One of the things that we saw, we were approached by a lot of commercial interests who wanted to promote their products, and some of those products would not pass my personal filter for something that constituted green solutions. So obviously that's not a universal filter, but just something to be aware of. There's a lot of, I think, frantic thinking and a sense of urgency that's also unrealistic reflection of how the process is actually going to unfold. So that's kind of one piece. I think the other piece is for those of us who are not personally affected by that, but who have an opportunity to be thinking more forward than our own need to rebuild or help our neighbors or family rebuild, is to recognize that this will not be the last such disaster. It will not be the last disaster in our immediate environs. And so we need to be working with all sorts of cultural public institutions and agencies to say, okay, how are we going to be in a better position for the next disaster? That I think a lot of things that were revealed from the North Bay fires were how poorly prepared we were, and really thinking in terms of what sort of policy, procedure, planning, legislative measures could be put in place to mitigate against these events.
Thank you, Ann. Does anyone else want to share some of their thoughts around this? Laura, just mentioned some of the work you've been through. Would welcome some of your thoughts as well. Like, what should we be doing, now, thinking a bit about the future?
Well, I can speak a little bit to that. I think there's a lot of infrastructure work that needs to be done. Unfortunately, there always seems to be issues with water supply, electric supply, things like that, maybe are a little out of our hands, a little out of our realm on this meeting here. But I do think that, just as the previous architect spoke, there are so many things we can do. It's going to be very different than the way we've built before. But I think there are so many ways that we can build homes and create landscape around that can really slow the fire. It can mitigate a lot of the disaster that we end up having, the complete disaster. And I think that's the real harm here. So it's just so multi-leveled, even though it seems on the ground, it is really somewhat of a natural disaster that, in many ways we can't stop starting. We can't stop having start, but we can, I think, mitigate the total and complete destruction through some things on our own building processes. But I would love to see some other things happening in the way that we actually, treat the fires as a community.
Great, thank you, Laura. And Greg, I wanted to turn to you, but one question we've been getting a lot, from partners who look to us to advise on green buildings is sustainability also resiliency, and can those be the same thing? I would welcome some of your thoughts, just given some of the work you've done.
Yes, I just watched too many brand new homes go up in smoke, and on my end, I hope that we take the time to. I think we have a pretty good case study in front of us with a lot of newer homes, some of which are with us, and some of and survived, performed well, and some that are no longer with us, and at least take a real look, deep dive into those ones that seem to resist the forces at play here, and hope that we can build stronger, more resilient homes going forward. I think that on my end seems really important that we do take a bit of time here rather than just recreate what we had before. Our wildfire building code was pretty good. What else can we learn from this sort of disaster going forward?
Thank you, Greg. And I do want to kind of unpack a little bit around just the residential design a little bit. Not everyone's aware of kind of what are the best practices and what may be included in code. And so, maybe Steve, I'll go to you first. Just would love to hear some of your thoughts and some of the best practices that we should be looking at, as we approach, residential design.
You mean specifically for fire resiliency?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, by the way, it starts with landscape. Landscape has a huge impact. That's more, is it Ann Baker's domain? So on the construction side, it's all about creating a much less, creating far fewer opportunities for combustion on your exterior. So metal roofs, cementitious cladding, windows that are tempered glass, windows that blow out and then allow in embers, big problem. Not having eaves, or at least protecting them, which can catch embers. Those are some of the best practices. By the way, people talk about steel frame versus wood. Honestly, you see lots of steel frames that are remaining in the Palisades and nothing else. So that is far less important. It's much more important to protect the facade. Oh, last thing, sprinklers that flood the roof. These are all things, by the way, we've done. And I hate to say this, but I hope that there's a requirement coming out of this for recovery, and frankly, for anything in WUI, high fire zones, to do much more fire resilient design. It costs more, bottom line, but this costs more than not doing it. So
yeah, and this is something I think we need to touch on a little bit is the ROI, right, of this approach. What's that return on investment for approaching this in a different way? Greg, any thoughts you maybe want to share on that? And then Ann, I want to turn to you to talk about landscape here.
Well, I do think Steve touched on many of these. I go back this morning and look at the new house on a corner lot that just didn't survive the ember attack, and it's got 4 gables, projecting eaves, a million places for embers to collect and be fanned by 50-mile-per-hour winds. And I think the materials play a role, but also the form, and just air sealing the building and not doing vents. Best practices would have a fully insulated, sealed building envelope, inviting heat, smoke, whatever into your building. I'm hoping we steer people away from that.
Laura, any best practices you would add? Laura or Ann, anything you would add that hasn't been mentioned, around just sort of home design? And then I'll turn to Ann and talk about landscape for a moment.
Oh, well, it was my experience kind of in the forensic understanding of what happened in the Tom's fire. And I had a house that was surrounded by fire, and it was built to best practices fire resistive design in the 2005 code. So it wasn't like it is now, but it was and it stood. And the reason is because it had, the venting was protected, and just knowing and traveling in Ventura that evening of December 4th, when the fire was raging throughout our community, where we were losing was the embers were getting into the attic. And once it's in the attic, your house is gone. There's just no hope for it, or under the house. So I think what Greg has said, keep your house, which is a very unique kind of, not unique, but it's a newer trend. And it is, to me, the one of the best practices you can make, along with the landscaping. And those are two, I think, real important aspects that I think just need to be built in. Yes, Greg.
Just one thing to add, windows are a huge part of the equation. They're a very vulnerable part of a building, and looking at these multiple roof lines and the way the wind was blowing and embers, golf ball size embers could collect, I do think we have to think about that. If windows are close to the ground or close to a roof line, it's very vulnerable when fanned for hours by giant embers because other houses are going up in smoke. So I do think windows are a big part as well.
And just something you wanted to add?
Yes, I've been really lucky to work pretty closely with Steve Quarles, who's a fire, prevention expert up here, and has worked for the UC Forest Products Lab and Institute for Building and Home Safety. And one of the things Steve pointed out is that skylights are a real vulnerable spot too, because among other things, they create dams on the roof where debris can collect, and flammable debris. So people love skylights, but they're not necessarily super helpful. So I mean, and I will underscore everything that's been said so far about venting and non-combustible cladding materials as well, and landscape, all that's super important. Oh, and another thing Steve had taught me about windows is oftentimes dual pane windows, even if one pane is tempered, the second isn't, and having both panes tempered is way better.
I will
Thank you.
recommend that going forward for sure. Our outside pane broke and our inside one held. It's not a single line of defense like that. It's not great.
I do want to turn to landscape for a moment because, I do think it's so, the importance of landscape needs to be raised quite a bit. And I want to turn for you for a moment just to talk about, maybe some of the approaches on the landscape side, and then I want to dive a little deeper after that about how it plays together with the home design itself. So over to you, Ann.
Okay,
Ann B.
thank you.
Ann B. Yeah.
Well, I think one thing that's really important to consider right at the outset in terms of site planning is kind of fire defense. So you want to make sure that your home has really good visibility from the street to your home. So the driveway has to be really visible, and then you want to have defensible space out in front of your building. So if you're on a suburban street, that's one thing, but if you're on a driveway, you really need to think about, if the fire department's going to defend your home, are they going to be able to see your home, and are they going to be able to do it safely? So those are the decisions that firefighters make. I'm going to protect that home. I can't protect that home because I'm not safe there. So I think that's a really initial consideration in terms of site planning. And then kind of the big, the big issues that people need to address is the 5-foot non-combustible zone around the home. So you want to make sure you have at least 5 feet where you have nothing that's going to catch embers, whether it's a broom or foundation shrubs or furniture or whatever. That 5-foot zone is really critical. And it doesn't mean it has to be just concrete. It could be succulents. It could be gravel with, moist kind of plants like, I don't know, lily of the Nile, something that's really not going to burn. It can still look nice and reduce heat loading onto your building, but it needs to be non-combustible. And then moving out from the house, so it's always kind of from the house out, so you want to get all your house stuff straight, which is what all the architects are talking about. And then from the house out, increase your safety. You want to have 30 feet clean and green. So it's okay to have landscape plantings of all sorts, but you want to make sure they're well maintained, they're clean, and they're green. They need to be thriving. And you can think about that in terms of creating islands of planting. So you have, plant groupings that are separated both vertically in terms of fuel ladders and then horizontally in terms of fuel ladders. So if you create islands with pathways or with succulents or with low ground covers so that you're separating all your fuels and you're maintaining them separate from your house. So you're eliminating these fuel ladders. And then we could talk a little bit more like, when you're planning your garden, where you're going to want to think about trees and shade and things like that. But in terms of kind of your fire-wise landscape, those are the main principles.
I'd add, careful about, and this big issue in Palisades, wooden fences.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. I think wooden fences, I did a lot of work up in kind of the Santa Rosa Hills after the Tubbs fire, and the wooden fences and the screening shrubs that people create in order to have privacy end up being a major fuel load. And so rethinking your fences and not having wood fences connecting to your building. So that's part of that non-combustible zone. You need to have a metal or some other type of fencing material that's connecting to your building. And you're going to want it to take as much fuel out of that fencing system and that whatever privacy screen you need as possible.
Well, we get a lot of questions here too about people asking, can I still have trees? And the answer is, I think, like you said, Ann, you can have trees, just don't create that ladder to your home. And I've seen even just these last couple of weeks, looking at some of our native plants, specifically the oaks and others that, they do a good job of navigating some of these challenges with fire. Any comments from you just around some of the approach using natives? We do native plant classes ourselves and something we're big believers in, but we welcome any comments from you on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people in the rebuilding process, in addition to kind of planning your approach in your driveway, your non-combustible zones, you're going to want to plan where your trees are going very early in the process. So work with your architect diagrammatically, thinking about, where can I put a tree to get the shade where I need it, where it's far enough away from my roof line, it's not affecting my solar panels. It becomes a real challenge. And so I wouldn't think you're going to be able to add the shade that you want to make your garden comfortable after you've done everything else and you've built your building. You want to do it right in the beginning, figure out where your trees are going and how big they are. And there's some other things like that. Like if you want to reduce water use in your garden, you're going to want to think about gray water and think about your fixtures and where they're located in the building relative to your landscape spaces, so you can discharge gray water efficiently into your garden areas. And then finally, native plants, the nice thing about native plants is you're going to use a lot less water. And generally speaking, you're going to have lower fuels with healthy, resilient native plants. So you can, the plant selection, a lot of people focus on plant selection in fire-wise landscapes, and it's important, but the most important things are the configurations and the way you create fuels and separate fuels. You will want to avoid plants that have small needles, that are really twiggy. You're going to avoid hedging. If you have lots of hedging plants, you create very twiggy fuel-loaded systems. So those are some other suggestions.
Thank you, Ann. And just appreciate all the questions coming in the chat. Please keep those questions coming. As I mentioned, we will do our best to try to get those answered in some of the follow-up email that we send out after this webinar. And then we're also going to move a lot of this content, especially resources being shared and others, to the community hub that I mentioned, where there can be some forums and topics. So we do want to make sure people get their questions answered, because it takes a village here. I do want to move to code for a moment, because that's something that, again, everyone's talking about code and how do we need to update codes. John, I know from our conversations, you did some work post the Woolsey and Thomas fire, working in the city of Malibu and others around code updates. What do you think needs to be looked at right now from a code perspective? What should we be advocating for?
The things that were discussed in this conversation are all related to codes. The eave conditions, the venting conditions have all been discussed for a number of years, and they aren't in place yet, and in existing buildings. So there are some important aspects of remodeling existing building that aren't applicable to the building code, because the building code regulates when you're doing something. And promoting fire resistance in existing buildings is an area that I'm not familiar with because I don't think it exists much, but it's that probably the most important thing. We're
Yeah.
talking about houses that are already existing if we're talking about increasing fire resistance in existing housing stock. And that isn't part of the code. The code concept is that you have to build in a certain way, and we've talked about building and landscaping and other things and rebuilding, and that's what I'm here to talk about, and that's what the rest of the discussion has been. There is a public policy and promotion concept that's missing entirely regarding existing buildings. I haven't ever heard of anybody doing fire resistant construction. You do a kitchen remodel, you do a addition, and the addition is maybe more fire resistant because it's new, but the rest of the house is not necessarily improved in the way that these skilled designers that we've just heard from are talking about. I think that's what occurred to me in working in the Oakland fire, which was a really concentrated fire. It was only 2,800 houses compared to 14,000, but that was a really narrow, congested area, heavy foliage, and really similar to some of the areas that were burned in the recent LA fires. The firestorm is dealing with wind, and the wind is such an important factor, and that's a little beyond the topic at hand, but dealing with fire resistance, keeping in mind it's wind and fire. It's a firestorm. We had hurricane winds,
Yes.
and that's what happened.
Well, and to your point, you know, and again, I live here in Pasadena, and I've seen concrete walls that were knocked down by the wind we had that night. And
concrete
that gives you a
walls
sense, yeah.
Concrete walls are damaged by fire. I worked on a couple of houses in Oakland, and they were on steep hillsides and had retaining walls. The retaining wall had to be torn down because it was exposed to so much heat. It's a weird thing. They have this pink glow to the concrete. When the concrete is fire damaged, it's rehydrated, and the strength of the cement is damaged by super high temperatures. But
One of the things that we're looking at is right now, specifically around materials, you know, one of the things that we're trying to head off at the pass is obviously the cost of materials to rebuild. Looking at how can we do maybe some group purchasing specifically around sustainable materials to help drive down some of those costs. So I would love to chat about just materials for a moment. That's another question we're getting a lot of. People want to use, you know, more local materials, more natural materials, lower embodied carbon materials. I would just welcome, you know, if there's any thoughts around that, Steve, or and then maybe I'll ask a couple of other panelists just around the materials side of things. I know we talk about low carbon concrete and other options, but how does that relate to the rebuild?
Well, I mean, like I said, one of the most important for fire resiliency is the cementitious cladding. I'm not saying it's the only one. You can do treated wood, that's more expensive, but you can get reasonably hardy board. Hardy board is a great material. We use for waterproofing, insulation, and 1 hour fire rating, we use a zip system. Now it's more expensive as a water barrier than like a Tyvek. But when you sort of add up all of the things you get from it, particularly 1 hour fire rating, it's awesome. So we love that. You know, metal roofs, they're more expensive than shingles. I've not seen any lower cost solution for that. And you know, tempered glass or double pane tempered, you know, that's expensive too. You know, sadly, at least in LA, you've got to have a LARR for
Yeah.
for certain materials, which is
Yeah, if you could explain what that is for folks, because it is a
it's
new
a
wrinkle.
special certification, and it limits, certainly for structural materials, what you can use. The rationale is funny enough, fire and safety or health and safety. But I think it's a bit overkill, particularly because you may have a national certification or international certification, but you still have to do an LARR, it doesn't matter. So
Maybe that's something we can finally tackle here
exactly,
in
yeah,
the wake
yeah,
of this.
we have
situation.
less
Yeah.
innovation, or no, let me say, we have less options in
Yeah.
terms of innovative materials because of that.
You know, I know we're going to move to breakouts here in a couple of minutes. Just around materials, Ann, Greg, Laura, anything else you maybe want to add just around specific materials? We're getting a lot of questions around that.
I saw a question about ICF, specifically insulated concrete forms, in the chat. And this is one of the materials that, our team and the rebuild group in the North Bay really grappled with, and ultimately came down on the side of, no, we really don't want to exhibit insulated concrete forms. Again, everybody's got different filters, but our concern is that, as Steve said, it's really the claddings that are the first line of defense. And ICFs are tremendously embodied carbon intensive. And the foams, I have yet to see an exception to the fact that the foams, if exposed to extreme heat, will disintegrate and give off toxic fumes. So there are issues with them. It's like, yeah, sure, the concrete itself will, hold off flames getting into the interior of the structure, but I don't view it as an environmentally friendly material. And I think what we're really striving towards is solutions that protect the occupants, the structures, and the planet simultaneously. And I don't think that ICFs meet those criteria.
I like that Steve brought up the 1 hour fire rated zip system. I'm just going to go on board as saying the 5/16 inch hardy board is not a robust protection against flame and radiant heat and fire. If you look at the Australian bushfire code, they go with thicker cement board panels where they know we're going to have a higher fire load. I just saw too many of these new houses slapped up with hardy board, and it's not where I want to have embers flamed by 50-mile-per-hour winds without additional protection.
Well, I want to say thank you to our, do you have a comment you want to make, John, before we?
I have one timely topic that we haven't discussed. It's a regulatory issue, which is my area. The deadline to participate in right of entry, which is the permission to come aboard your property to the Army Corps of Engineers and clean up the property, is March 31st, which is 2 months, but you must do that. I wouldn't recommend starting this fire reconstruction project by trying to find a contractor to clean up your lot. The Army Corps of Engineers is going to do this with bulldozers. The stuff is going to be gone, but it's not, and it's not a safe place to go looking for your address book that you didn't grab when you left. It's important that it's dangerous materials. They're burned and they weren't stacked in a neat way. There can be injuries and exposure to toxic materials, but to have the Army Corps of Engineers clean it up, there's a right of entry form that needs to be filled out in each municipality. And
well, maybe someone could drop that here in the chat. I think that sounds like an incredibly important thing for people to be aware of and have access to if they're not already. And I'm going to go ahead and share our breakouts here. So I just want to caution everyone, this is going to take a moment to move to our breakouts. We've got breakouts, and I'm just going to go to the next screen here. So we're going to have 4, or actually this should say 5 breakout rooms. So we're going to have one on building design and materials, landscape, lessons learned from prior fires, green materials, resources, and matchmaking, which will be staffed by our own Liz Christie, and then demolition permitting and codes, which John will be in. So you can see our speakers you've heard from today will be in these rooms. We are going to keep those open till 1:10, and really encourage you to dive in and have some discussion. So if I could ask someone on my team to launch the breakout rooms, that'd be great. Now you should see a pop-up that'll come in your Zoom box, and you can select which breakout room you want to join. If you don't see that right away, you need to go to More, which is the 3 dots on the bottom of your Zoom panel there, and you'll see a little thing there that says breakouts. You can click on that and go to the breakout rooms. If you cannot figure out how to get into the breakout room, that's okay. Please drop the name of the breakout you want to go to into the chat, and we will put you there. Keep in mind, there are over 200 people here on this call. It will take us a moment to do that. So if you can help yourself get to the breakout, you'll be better off. But if you need help, please let us know. Drop that in the chat, and encourage you all to have some conversation. We will come back here at 1:10, just do a final closeout. And again, this is just the first of likely many conversations. So appreciate everyone taking the time. And let's go ahead and launch those breakouts. And if you need help, again, please put that in the chat. We will try to get you to your breakout, and it will take a moment. Our speakers, also, you should see a little box that'll pop up. It's asking you to join one of the breakouts. And our Green Building Core team, I think, is trying to move everyone into those as quickly as they can, which is not an easy process. Laura, Steve, John, did you see a pop-up come up for you to move into your breakout?
I don't
Don't see it pop up.
see it.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move you in there. It'll probably ask you in just a second.
Okay. Yeah, still nothing.
It's weird. I'm seeing that you were assigned to it. Do you see the 3 dots down below?
3 dots. Yes, more.
And then you should see a thing that says breakouts.
Record captions, docs, notes, whiteboards, reset to default.
No breakout.
Okay.
No breakout
We'll
here.
keep moving you. I see you here right now, Steve, so I'm gonna move you into breakout 3. So it should see a pop-up now. I just did
Now,
it.
got it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I'm not seeing breakouts either. Ben,
Did you drop your in the chat which room you wanted to go to?
no, I didn't. Sorry.
We'll try to move you there. Again, just have some patience with us. There's a lot of folks here, so we're moving folks as quickly as we can.
Hey, Ben.
Hey, Murdoch.
Hi, how you doing? What is
Alright.
that breakout room symbol supposed to be?
It should just be in the menu there, for you to pick which breakout you want to go to. There you go. Liz just put a thing here in the chat to announce that. Which one do you want to go to, Merdad? I'll put you in there.
5, please.
Okay.
Building materials, okay.
And we'll leave these open a little bit longer just because we know this is taking a while to get people
And
in.
then can we, after,
Ah,
can
there it
we do multiple breakout rooms or just
Yeah,
one?
you can move between breakout rooms. You'll come back to this main room.
Uh-huh.
You can leave the breakout or you can pick another one from the menu.
Thank you.
Oh, I found the breakout rooms on my screen. I noticed that I'm on the Ben, your screen share, but if I click back over on the top to meeting, I can actually then click the breakout rooms.
Oh, okay. That's
Can't
helpful.
anyone. Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe it's in a different place because of the screen share.
Top left corner of the screen on the, if that helps.
Thank you. Anybody else need help here? We're trying to, you may, if you drop in the chat, we're trying to move up to everyone. Just takes a moment. Majan, what room do you want to go to?
Can I go to room number 1?
One. All right. I should pop up for you now.
Okay, thank you.
Kayla, you want to hold up just hold up a finger. Which room do you want to go to? Oh.
I think it's just trying to go to 3, Ben.
Okay.
I can't do it.
This is always the hard part here. Marty, what room do you want to go to?
Is 1.
1. He wants to go to 1. Okay. I just sent him there.
Can I just tell you the ones that I'm reading here?
That might be easier. I'm
Okay.
moving through them as fast as I can. Yeah.
Hannah on 3.
And on 3, just give me a second. Boom, done. Okay.
David on 1.
David
Alfred.
Garty? David Godfrey. No, not that guy. Not that guy. Number 1. Looks like he's there. Okay.
Marisol on 1.
Marisol on 1. Looks like she's there.
There's Stephanie 2.
Two. Okay, she's not unassigned, so she's okay. Okay, next one.
Let's see. I think we got oh, Vicky still here? Vicky
No, I
Tuck,
think she moved already.
Jean. Let's see.
Looks like he's there. Is there anyone else in this main room who needs help getting to a specific room? David Garty, there you go, room 3, on your way. Renata, room 1, all right. There you go. Martin, room 1, there you go. Anyone else here who needs to move to a breakout room? Nancy, room 1, I'm on it. There you go. Anyone else here who needs to get to a room? Marco, Kelly, Ronnie, anyone else need to get to a room here? Good to see some familiar names as well.
Hello. Hello, Ben.
Hello, hey Ronnie.
Hi. Is this still going on? Because I thought it was for 1 hour.
Yeah, we have breakouts happening right now with our speakers. So if there's a room you want to go to, I think I maybe put you in a room already, but we can move you to
Yeah,
another
I'm
room.
sorry. I had to take care of something. Can I go
Of course.
back into? Thank you.
Yeah, you
And
can, yeah.
and I missed part of it. Will we get a recording?
Yes, we'll send out a recording.
Okay, thank you. So you're putting me in a breakout room right now?
I can. I think I already maybe put you in one. Let me see. I think I put you in lessons learned. Do you want me to move you to something else?
Yeah, I mean, I think George, is George there?
Oh, I
George
don't.
or Anna? The landscape or Anna was.
You want to go to the landscape room?
And yeah,
You
I
see the
think
breakouts here. There's a room on landscape. That's room number 2. You want me to move you there?
maybe I don't know. I mean, look, I'm a design build firm. What do you suggest? I
Yeah,
mean,
I think Anne would be great on landscape. I think that's fine. Or building design and materials, either one of those.
and I think okay.
Which one?
They were all good. I mean, they were
Yes,
all
they're
good.
probably okay. There's only a few more minutes left. I'll move you to landscape real quick.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome back, everyone, from your breakouts. We're just gonna wait till everyone gets back here in about 30 seconds, and we'll close out here for today. I always want to do a countdown when it gets down to 10.
I'd like to before it all gets started again, there's been all this lifting from Gavin Newsom about the environmental regulations and lifting all of that. I mean, I don't necessarily think that that's such a great idea when we have the opportunity to build with environmental in place. I mean, I think it should be there. And if they
And the
wanted to-
message too that it sends is that that's a hindrance,
Yeah, which I think is really completely wrong. And what they ought to do is get their infrastructure for permitting figured out a little bit better and not take away some of the most vital things that we actually need. So I'm not too happy about that. And I don't know.
And I think there's a lot we can learn from this process. And again, this is just one conversation of many. I just want to try to get folks out of here on time. Encourage you to join the community hub to continue some of that discussion.
Okay.
I just want to say thank you to all of our speakers again one more time. And thank you to all of you for joining. Everyone's time is incredibly valuable. It's our most precious resource. Want to invite you, we're going to have more wildfire focused conversation, but we are having a thought leadership event around climate risk and insurance on March 13th. So just want to make sure you're aware of that. Someone on my team here will add a link here in the chat and you'll get a follow-up email to sign up for that. Also want to note that the California Green Building Conference, we're actually hosting that in San Francisco at Fort Mason this coming May. The call for submissions is open right now. We do have a recovery and rebuilding track at the conference. So we've added a separate track at the conference just in the wake of some of these wildfire events. We encourage you to check that out. We'll also have table talks. We have case study presentations, exhibitors, art, music, all the things. And then Greenbuild will be coming to LA actually this November. We will be hosting Greenbuild with our partners at USGBC and Informa. More to come on that. We'll have discount codes and whatnot to send to folks. We've also asked them to add donation button to registration for wildfire at Greenbuild. And then here you can see some of our events coming up in the coming months. I mentioned our thought leadership event, but there's things happening all across the state. We have some home electrification fair and home tours happening in San Diego in February. You can see a Central Coast Green School celebration happening in March up in the Central Coast. We have Women in Green breakfasts happening in the Bay Area and in LA, as well as Advocacy Day in Sacramento. So we have a whole year of events planned. There's more being added all the time since all of our communities are coming up with their calendars for the year. So we encourage you to check that out. We just want to do also a note for our Career Center. The recording of this will be available there. We also have career fairs. We have a bunch of resources there if you're looking to elevate your career in the space or your education. Education's a big component of all of this. If you feel inspired by any of our work, would help to support our small but mighty team, you can donate now by texting CA Green to 707070. So appreciate anything that you feel can help us and will help our wildfire recovery efforts. And then just encourage you to stay connected. It's the most important thing during times like these. And we will send a follow-up email with a link to the recording, with the links to as many resources as we could gather from what happened today, and then the free code to join our community hub to continue the conversation. And feel free to reach out to us if you need anything. Again, we have matchmaking forms up, and just appreciate everyone joining today, and hopefully you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.